2023. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Leyva. Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt. Mayor Polguta.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a packed agenda today, huh, Mr. Davidson? So leading us off on 2A, fiscal year 2023-24 budget review.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it is going to be a packed session, so hang on, but it's all good stuff, so a lot of good things for the future of our community. So Mayor and Council, I am honored and pleased to be able to present to you our fiscal year 24 budget. If you can imagine, we're already at 2024 in budget development. The packet that's before you literally has been months in the making. And we started literally at the end of last calendar year, starting to prepare for the budget process, identifying all the meetings. We had a great kickoff with the mayor and council at the end of January, where we spent time going through where we are with our strategic plan, where you guys see the future of our community and setting priorities. And so your comments that you provided at that study session helped to inform where we're making big investments for this next fiscal year. Before we get into the heart of all of the good stuff that's contained in the budget, I want to recognize a few individuals that literally put their heart and soul into this process. So first is our esteemed finance director, Katie Pell. She and her team, Lisa Smerrick, she also has spent, I don't see her here, but she sits in all of the various meetings. But Katie and her team literally spend hundreds of hours putting this together, and that's an area where I want to also eventually talk to council of investing in more software for them, because this entire thing is done on an Excel spreadsheets. That is a lot of work in making sure all the formulas go together. And so Katie has given up, many hours, evenings and weekends to put this together. And I just want to thank her. She doesn't like the recognition, but she deserves the recognition. But behind Katie, we have a big team that also work very hard. Every one of our department heads, our department leaders, and then behind those department heads are the admins. We have a great group of people who spend, again, many, many hours scrubbing the numbers, trying to identify what are the priorities, and making sure we're aligning that with your guys' expectations and ultimately the public. So I just want to thank them for all of the work that they've done over the past several months and making sure that we're fiscally responsible to our community. So this budget, it does reflect your vision. And I would, characterize it there, there's a lot of things that the town does to make sure that this community is able to operate, day in and day out. But when it really comes down to it, there's kind of three big areas that really touch people's lives. And that's going to be our road infrastructure, people being able to get around the community. You'll see that reflected in this budget. Our parks and recreation, those community amenity components, very important for our future and adding a quality of life. And then public safety. So all three of those areas you'll see definitely reflected as big investments for this next fiscal year, certainly this year and next year. It's not to say that all of the other units aren't as critically as important, but they play a different role and touch the citizens in different ways. And so we have a phenomenal group that works very hard to serve our residents, our businesses, and our visitors. So what I'd like to do is just kind of tee it up with a couple highlights in the council's strategic plan areas, where we are going to be hopefully investing money with your approval. And then Ms. Pell is going to lead us through each departmental and fund group to go into a little bit more in depth. So starting off with, again, I tell our team this, that the most important thing in our organization is people. Work doesn't get done without people. Solving problems doesn't get done without having smart, engaged people. And so our team is absolutely vital to the success of this community and each other. So I'd like to highlight just a few things. I'm not going to go through every one of these items, but if you do have questions about any of the items, we can certainly dig into that. The first one is the classification and compensation study that we launched as part of this fiscal year. We are now well into that, and we will have some pretty good substantive results in about a month. And basically what that's going to show us is where are we at as an organization with our pay and then our pay structure. So when we bring people on board, the minimum that we start them off with to the midpoint to a max of a range, where do we align with other jurisdictions that are our peer cities? So obviously Prescott, Yavapai County, a number of cities down in the valley. So this consultant is digging into all of that. They have every one of our job descriptions, and they're making sure they're aligning what every one of our employees does to what the market is. We will have positions that come back out of this process that are at market and even above market. Those positions are not going to have a market increase. They may have a merit increase or a cost of living increase, but they're not going to have an adjustment based on this process. We will have large numbers of employees, especially on our frontline positions, that I'm positive are below market, and so that will come back as part of the report. We have a large number plugged in here. This is not what we are anticipating to spend. It's going to be far less than that. But we wanted to make sure we had no idea what we were looking at. Preliminary discussions with the consultant has reassured us it's going to be less than that. So as we are finalizing the budget, we'll have a much better idea of how much we can remove from this particular ask that's in the budget. Last year, we re-implemented or wanted to make sure that employees had continuing educational opportunities. That was an overwhelming success. We did it as a first come, first serve. We are also this year been revising some of the policies related to tuition reimbursement. We're asking for a slight increase in that to continue to give those opportunities to employees to seek continuing education. You drop down a few more bullet points. You get into the training and development. Again, this is a townwide number, but you can see broken out by the three largest divisions. The largest being our public safety. Every one of our officers are highly trained individuals, and to make sure that we've got the right certifications, and if they've got specialties, that they've got the appropriate classes and exposure to what we expect of them as public safety officers. But we have increased this townwide, the training and development, again, to make sure that our staff is prepared for the needs of this community. And for them to be able to respond, to the dynamics of our community, we have to make sure we keep investing in them, giving them opportunities to grow and learn. Drop down a few more, get into vehicles. This past year, as you know, we made a big effort to try to start to upgrade the town's fleet. We have an extremely aged fleet. Unfortunately, we got caught up in the worldwide, supply chain issues. And so our partner in this, the Enterprise Fleet Services, we've not been able to receive all of the vehicles that we had ordered under this fiscal year. So some of that's getting rolled over. That's why that number is a little bit larger. A large number of these vehicles are public safety vehicles, as officers being able to, respond to calls in the community. But every department, again, that's an investment and a conversation you guys have given to us of we need to make sure that our staff have safe, reliable vehicles to do their job, and that we have good vehicles that represent our community. And so we're committed to being able to do that. If you look on the right-hand column, all of that are new positions that are being recommended as part of this fiscal year budget. It's a large investment in staff. There is a large amount of it, though, that was contracted out to other components, and what we're requesting or asking is that rather than contract out that service, it's going to be done in-house. There's several that I want to highlight that I think are really important. First is our economic development. We are creating an economic development division, and we had previously contracted that service out, so that money is just being used. There is some seed money in this first year, and Katie will kind of highlight that. So the budget's a little bit larger this year than what it normally will be, but it's just to get the program up and running. And then drop down a little bit further, there's 3 maintenance workers and another maintenance worker 3, and it has janitorial next to it. Historically, we've contracted that out. We've run into a number of challenges with some outside vendors in trying to maintain at the consistency that staff and the public really demand of our facilities. And so we've decided to bring that in-house. And so that's pretty much a swap between what we were paying and will be paying with this. All of these other positions, in talking with all of our staff, it's an investment really in frontline services. So it's more public works staff, park staff, people that are going to be out doing great things to maintain this community. And so hopefully that reflects your expectations as a community. Let me pause there and just if there are any questions on our investments with high-performing team. Okay. Water stewardship, we spent a lot of time with you over the past several months talking about water and the importance of making sure that every drop of water in our community is being not only, properly cleaned and recharged back in the aquifer. This next fiscal year reflects, again, those priorities. So the PFAS and PFAS chemicals, the forever chemicals, we have, $3.5 million program for the cleanup of that. That's in engineering right now, so we'll have additional information that will come back to council in the next few months. The continuation of our master drainage plan and recharge plan. So this is kind of the second half of that. This is where we actually get into specific types of projects. It won't be the project, but it'll be planning for those projects around the community. And then the last bit of that is our, recharge and then conservation efforts. And so again, making sure that every drop of water that's coming out of our wastewater treatment plant that we get back appropriately into the aquifer. I'm not highlighting every single capital item. There's a whole list further in your book, but these are kind of the key highlights of things that we've talked about over the past several months. Any questions on water? Okay. Quality of life investments. Again, want to highlight just I would love to highlight every one of them because they're awesome, great projects. Obviously, our routine street preservation and maintenance, as you know, we have started to introduce new treatment maintenance methods that will, I think, provide, it's a little bit more expense, but the quality and the durability will last the community longer. So we'll be continuing with that and experimenting even with other different maintenance methods to make sure that we have good, smooth roads. That second bullet, the specific, street improvements, that's a very large number, $25.6 million. There's quite a number of projects that are included in that, but there's a few really large ones. The first is the Glassford Hill mill and fill. So basically from Highway 69 up to Panther Path is going to be completely redone. That's over $9 million. There's a third lane of Glassford Hill Road from 89A coming southward that's programmed into the budget. Now that is tied to a external legislative funding source. So if the legislature funds it, then we'll be able to proceed with it. If the legislature doesn't fund it, it will be paused until we have sufficient revenue for that. And then Viewpoint Drive is also included in that because it'll roll over into next fiscal year. And so that's from Long Look up to Manly will be completely redone with a multi-use pathway. Mountain Valley Park, as you know, the council, we authorized investment to redo the turf on the large field. We're going to be doing the second part of that with the other turf area. So another big investment. That's going to be wrapping up most of our ARPA dollars. So that's where we'll kind of use the rest on Parks and Recreation area. We have a dog park programmed up at Pronghorn for the $260,000. The raising of the sewer covers, the manhole covers around the community. We've gotten lots of positive feedback that people like not hitting the manhole covers. And so we'll continue throughout the community of trying to invest to raise those manhole covers. Our new public works director also knows that when we do a road project, we make sure we raise the manhole cover when we do the road project so we don't have to go back in and do that. The council, obviously, with safety in our community, with crosswalks, we've invested a lot of money this year with crosswalks. We want to start also adding in key strategic locations, the solar push button indicator lights, the ones like we have right here across that connect to the Liberty Traditional School. So there's a number of areas in the community where this could be warranted that allows kids to get to park safely. The multi-use path improvements, again, great investments this year and resounding positive feedback from the community. We want to continue to add additional multi-use pathways as well as resurface the ones that are in dire need of that. And then the other big project is our Glassford Hill open space and recreational space acquisition. We have the maximum amount of what the phase 1 would cost, this $8.5 million. We are hopeful that there will be a revised appraisal. Hopefully the number comes back down, but there's also other funding in play. There's legislative dollars, county dollars that will come into play with that. And so we'll again come back to council on what the total cost of that, but it'll be not greater than that. It will be hopefully less than that. Any questions on quality of life items? All right, and the last one that I wanted to highlight before I turn it over to Ms. Pell is our prosperous community, which is all about economic development and jobs. We have our Prescott Valley Monumentation signage that you had approved. These are the entry signs that are coming into the community from both Prescott and from the Dewey side. That should be underway in the next couple months. But also tied to that, and it's also tied to the Glassford Hill Road redo, it will be an archway that really is going to be our gateway into Prescott Valley. And so that's programmed as part of this budget. The continuation of our body-worn camera program, and then I've highlighted our economic development division. And included in that is that's where the chamber contract will be located, is in that particular department. So with that, any questions on quality or prosperous community? Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pell, and she is going to take us through all of the detail.
Welcome, ma'am. You and Mr. Davidson kind of matched today for your outfits.
We didn't even plan that. So, well, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. So to start with, I'll go over the major fund summaries. We're just going to highlight the few major funds. So we're looking at general fund first. And this is the cash balance that we've seen in the general fund since 2016-17. And the light blue is unassigned and unavailable. So we basically keep that as a safety net for us. We try and keep 25% of our revenues in that category. The green piece is a 10% rainy day or stabilization amount that we don't want to spend. And the yellow is essentially surplus. So you can see that the surplus has been growing over the years. We are expecting it to continue in 22-23. And then we do see a drop. And part of that is because we had some unique revenues that came in from CARES Act funding starting in 2019-2020 and continuing through 2021. And that's where we got money from the federal government, where we were able to fund some of our public safety operations, which freed up general fund dollars. And those dollars have been committed previously by council to the YMCA project. So we kind of have those, that's the dark blue section. So you can see we kind of carried those over the years, and then this next year we're expecting to spend those. And then the dark green is library litigation proceeds. Again, we received those from the ongoing litigation, and they're being used to fix the building. So we had those funds accumulate, so we do have a drop, but it is a large portion of it is due to those revenues that we previously accumulated. And so this just shows it in a little bit of a different way. The revenues are in the green column and the expenditures are in the blue column. It's got one-time revenues to one-time expenditures. And at the very top in the 23-24 budget graph, it shows you the portion that we're going to need from the litigation proceeds, the CARES Act offset, as well as amounts from prior year positive surplus cash flow. So we are dipping into that a little bit this year to meet all of the objectives of the budget, but it's not a ongoing draw on the general fund. They're for one-time expenses, specifically those items that I already mentioned. Going into HERF, or Highway User Revenue Fund, again, we're going to see a large drop in our fund balance, but we've been saving that up for the large projects that we have. And with that, we don't expect that to continue. We actually are recurring operating in that area is around 1.7 million to the positive. So we don't expect to continue to draw down on that until we have other large projects where we've sufficiently built up that balance again. For wastewater, again, you're going to see a very large drop here, and there's some significant investments being made this next year, including the lift station, which is $4 million all by itself at Southside, and then we have a sewer upsizing that's about $1.5 million, and headworks treatment at the wastewater treatment plant. It's improvements there and erosion control, and all of that's, I believe, about $4 million. So all of those things add up and do require large expense or draws on the cash balance, excuse me. With water, we also see a decrease. Again, some large projects that we have going. We've got the duplex booster station upsizing. And we also have the PFAS treatment that Mr. Davidson referenced. We are hoping to get grant funding for that. So we do have some grant funding programmed in or funding from WIFA to help offset that hit. And we also have the Summit Tank water line, which is about $2 million by itself. And all these, there's a lot of other little projects that we'll get to when we get to those individual slides as well. Basically, there's been a lot of need for a while on some of these systems, and we're really trying to make that investment with the funds that we've accumulated to rectify some of those issues. So this is a summary of all cash balances from general fund all the way down. We're not going to go through the list unless any of you have particular questions. Basically, a few things to note as far as negative cash balances go on impact fees culture. That's usually a question that we have, and that is due to the fact that the impact fees that we get for culture is only on residential, as we've seen residential construction kind of waver a little bit. We've seen more commercial permits and residential permits being drawn, and that goes to pay for the bonds for actually the construction of the library building. And the negative there is offset by the general fund. It covers any negative shortfall there. And we used to have a advance to the general fund of about $4 million. It's actually decreased now. We're down to about $2 million. So it is shrinking. It's just a process. And we'll continue to collect that fee after those bonds are paid off until the general fund has been replenished. So with that, I'll get into departmental summaries. So with community services, we have an addition of 3 staff members, including a library public services manager, which will help with their management and having enough staff to house or to be able to keep the library operations open 7 days a week like they have been doing. And then we did increase training for the community services department, and that increased by about $20,000. And additionally, library materials, we increased those by about $34,000. And here, I'll back up just for a second, just to show you on the graph. So the first column that you see is the recurring type expenses. So you can kind of see the trend line better versus having the one time in the same column. The second column with the yellow and the dark blue are one-time operating and capital expenditures, because those vary a little bit more each year. And then we also are taking on accreditation or park standards. So there's some money in there for consulting for that, for advancement this next year. And there's been increases in graffiti, unfortunately, and the cost of remediating that has increased. So that's about a $19,000 increase to their budget, as well as on a more of a fun note, additional instructor programming. So we've programmed in about 40,000 more for additional programs to offer to our community for the instructor costs. And we also have about a little over 37,000 additional for events that are being programmed in, from performers to advertising for those events. We are also doing something a little bit different now that we've established the bed tax fund, and we have the economic development department, and we are working with them to help enhance a few of those events to make them more of a tourist draw. And so the bed tax fund will actually be paying for portions of those events instead of general fund. So we're looking at the Winter Spectacular, Fandomania, as well as the 4th of July event. A few of the capital, oh yes, sir.
So I just want to give a shout out because the community services social media is out of this world. I mean, the Facebook page, the communication, when she sits with us on radio, we're live a lot of times, and there's so many people that know what's going on now because of her. And when I read that you have a 15% increase in volunteers, it's so noticeable. I know that the Quad Cities Church have been at a lot of our events and have bent over backwards to help us, and that was a real good encouragement. But it's just amazing what your department has done and the improvements. And I thought you guys were great last year, and I couldn't have imagined this much better. And I want to give a shout out for the librarians and Deborah and the mailing of books. I've never heard of a library doing that. It's just such a warm, fuzzy feeling that we're doing that. So thank you very much.
And getting into everything else that they have going on, they absolutely have a lot of projects scheduled for the community services side. So Mr. Davidson already touched on a lot of these. A few additional ones, they're going to continue their playground replacement program and actually adding a recirculation system to a spray pad at Antelope Park so that water can continually be reused. And then there's going to be specific enhancements to the Stone Ridge MUP. Oh, I'm so sorry. Is that better? All right. Do you need me to go back? Okay. So moving on to council, and feel free to stop me if you have any questions as we go through. So with council's budget, there was actually a little bit of a decrease in personnel, and part of that was just dependent on individual elections for health and dental benefits. And then we added $5,000 for boards and commissions trainings to add meetings or trainings about open meeting law, among other things. And we did move the employee engagement piece to the human resources budget to be able to conduct a larger scale combined kind of employee appreciation type event. With development services, there is some decreases here, but that is specific to creation of the neighborhood services department. So a portion of their staff is moving, 4 of their staff members will move to that neighborhood services department, and that moves a portion of the operating as well. And then they are going to continue the town code and land development code revisions over this next year and add citizen access implementation so citizens can request things online and work through that process in a more up-to-date manner. Additionally, e-plan software is being requested so they can do more electronically. As an organization, we're trying to move further and further away from paper. We're a little behind as far as that goes, but we're all excited for the future there. With economic development, this is the new department that we are adding, and most of it is offset by previous expenditures. As you can see in the kind of ghost columns, you can see where those expenses were previously. So we're not really increasing a whole lot other than the one-time operating, which, as Mr. Davidson had said, was for the economic roadmap portion, where we can actually get a great plan for the future of the economic development of our area, and additional supplies for the new positions that we're adding there. And most of it is coming back from that PVEDF contract cancellation, as well as the budget that already existed for economic development. So moving on, finance. Had to put kind of the nerd picture up here because that's, more my speed. So with that, we are adding a procurement manager this year, and this should help the town save a lot of money across the board. We've been decentralized for years as far as procurement goes, and this will allow us to take advantage of more bulk contract pricing, as well as making sure all of our procurement standards are followed, and have that person to really walk with departments through those steps to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. And
I have another comment. I just want to say, because we were listening to Mary today, I love it that our town doesn't charge each other. So for like legal and finance and all of that, because then it feels like it's not a family like we are now. And so I really appreciate that. And I know Mary was kind of saying how hard it is in the county because they do that. They charge for legal, they charge for overhead, they charge for finance, they charge for all of that stuff. The different departments have those charges. And so I'm just really grateful that we don't do that. So. A lot happier family without it.
And so we did move staff from the utilities, or from finance to the utilities department, and that was our 7 customer account staff. Previously, they were funded by water and wastewater directly, and now they are housed under that area as well. Moving on, really, we just saw a decrease due to the budget of the customer accounts division also moving over to the utilities department. Human resources, this is an area where we're investing a lot over this next year, but very direct investments. We've got the benefits consultant. As you all know, we changed this last year from a commission-based to a flat rate benefits consultant, which was a great move for the town. It saved us significant dollars every year, over $100,000 probably annually. And with that, we're programming that in going forward. So that wasn't in their budget previously, but now it is. Additionally, we increased tuition reimbursement by about $5,000 to allow for more opportunity for staff to take advantage of that. And then the next line is the employee engagement and appreciation. That's the amount that was moved from the council budget to human resources to conduct some kind of appreciation event for staff. And then we also have fitness test awards as a new area where HR is going to be working in conjunction with the police department to set up fitness standards and have the ability to reward those that meet those standards with a type of compensation. And then the class and comp study will be continued. And we're expecting it to go a little bit into this next year, so we have a little bit more programmed in, as well as AEDs. So those we actually don't have enough per building currently, and they cost about $1,800 a piece. So that's to get the 7 remaining AEDs that we need to make it a safer work environment. Between HR and IT, they are also going to be sharing an administrative support position that's being added this year. And IT will also be getting a support technician that'll be specifically for assisting with police department needs. They have a lot of computers and radios and other things in their vehicles, and they're constantly, adding things. They need continual equipment increases and changes. So this support technician will help make sure that they're ready to perform, to be able to respond. And then we also have a large bump in IT due to software maintenance. We've started housing more and more of the software town-wide underneath information technology, so they're an integral part in that software implementation, ongoing maintenance, and it is something that we've done because we actually have to track it differently from a financial side as well. There's additional rules on that this year, so putting it under IT makes sense. So you see a large jump, but that's a huge portion of that, about $317,000 of their increase was attributed to software that was already being paid for from other departments. And then replacement computers, that went up about $50,000, and we expect that to kind of stay about that amount going forward. Technology changes so quickly, there's a continual need to stay up to date on those devices because that's where we need to spend all of our time, especially if we're paperless. So we're working through that. And then a strategic plan this year for IT. It's in the one-time expenses. That's going to help really guide the future and cybersecurity and a whole bunch of other very important elements that we need to focus on to make sure that we're protected from any kind of cyber attacks, as well as, envisioning the future of the town through the technology side. And the wireless additions is, yes, sir.
I just want to give a shout out to Casey and Larry because what you're doing for the Wi-Fi is pretty amazing. I'm very anxious for that. And how improved our delivery at council meetings and the Facebook Live. It feels like our customer service has gone through the roof now, and I'm really, really appreciative for your outreach and what you've done, and it's so noticeable. So thank you very much.
And additionally in IT, there's a little bit of growth there, about 62,000, because they've changed our phone system as well. So we've centralized a lot of those previously decentralized phone costs, and we expect that to actually reduce this next year after we know what our new expectation will be going forward now that we have free long distance and other great things that they've implemented. Moving on to legal. So with legal, we actually had a large increase there in operating as well, but that's specifically due to outside legal counsel. This last year, we've seen a pretty large increase there just due to different projects and needs, and we're also centralizing any legal service bills through the legal department going forward. And that is one area that if we don't need it, it doesn't get spent. So it'll stay in that line just as a protective amount in case those funds are needed to be utilized. Magistrate court pretty much stayed level. It was a tiny decrease across personnel and operating. And I should mention, because we budgeted the $5 million for the potential increases from the class and comp study, we kept budgets for personnel level to the current year, with the exception of adding the new positions in, because we expect to come back to council once we have the finalized class and comp results, hopefully at the end of June, and prepare a transfer from that pool of money, if you will, to each department as needed. So Neighborhood Services is the other new department this year. So that is made up of the Animal Control Division that was previously housed in PD and the Code Enforcement Division that was previously in Development Services. So with that, again, with the ghost bars, you can see where their expenses lie in relation to prior year expenses. Part of the change is the need to add a director to that area. And we also added a one-time operating amount of $50,000 for housing consultant and initiatives, as they're going to be dealing with the housing side of neighborhood services as well. Yes.
So, the Housing Task Force finished their 8-month study and they're delivering it to Planning and Zoning on Monday, and it'll come to the council on the 24th to a study session. And there's some items in there that will need implementing, and I know it's bad timing for budget, but maybe that's something we can look at mid-year if we do a mid-year adjustment. But I know one thing that ultimately we'll have to look at, and again, mid-year is probably fine, is to seed a trust fund to have something locally that we can match with state or federal funding when developers come in. So add in your memory bank, please, Katie. And there'll be other things, but the employee, do we have employee in here? Put employee in here for a housing employee?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Hunt, no, we did not add a position yet. We're expecting to use a consulting service. That's part of that housing consultant piece. And then we are adding in the neighborhood services director. And then as that gets all worked out, that could be something that we look at.
At mid-year. T's only,
Mayor, Vice Mayor, the outside consultant is going to kind of help to establish the housing component and take the recommendations. So we'll utilize her services, and then we'll, look at next fiscal year as a way to add a permanent position in
you expect we'll have her for some time?
for a number of months.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then going on to non-departmental, this is another area where you see a large jump. There's a lot more colors here. There's a lot more areas involved. This is actually 2 slides for non-departmental. So we'll start with personnel. We're continuing to propose that we add $2 million to help pay off our unfunded PSPRS liability. The most recent actuarial had us at $8.4 million in unfunded liability. That was the December actuarial for the July 1st of 2022 number. Since then, we have paid an additional $2 million. So it stands to reason we should be a little below 7, probably with the interest, maybe even closer to 6. But we also have additional officers retiring and reaching that point in their career, which does change our numbers. So we need to continue to aggressively pay this down so we can get it to a manageable point. So each year we can take care of any difference. And then we also have outside agency funding. From a standpoint of what's new is we did add $40,000 for CYMPO annual fee that we've been working on with them. And everything else has stayed stationary from prior years. The contribution to CASA, Prevent Child Abuse with Yavapai Family Advocacy, Emergency Services Agreement, and Arizona Crisis Team. And then Event Center operations, so we do transfer funds to help the Event Center stay in operation, and it has increased this year because we pay the debt service additionally due to the HVAC repairs and replacements that we're working on. So there's going to be a larger amount needed this next year. It went up about $800,000. That is not expected to continue on after this next year. And then we have developer reimbursements. We're down to one developer agreement. We're excited to get that one taken care of, so we don't have any left. And then those sales tax funds will go straight to the general fund instead. Continuing insurance premium costs and other consulting needs, as well as Parkway CFD, we're continuing to contribute $65,000. Previously, we had it at 70. We were able to drop it 5,000 this year. That's just to help offset the burden on the property tax payers in that district due to the nonprofit ownership of a lot of the parcels. And then we also have 24,000 built in for strategic plan update. It could be multiple meetings and reanalysis of the strategic plan just to do an update and to make sure we're still going in the direction that council foresees for the future. And on our one-time operating, we have our YMCA facility contribution that we talked about earlier, and that's at $4.5 million approximately. And then miscellaneous grants that we program in, as well as the continued ARPA projects. So with capital, this has a large ticket item on it that is still being discussed, and that is the YMCA pool building construction. If the town were to construct it ourselves and then contract with the YMCA, as well as the related projects, which would be adding in the access road and converting the current Mountain Valley Splash facility, filling in the pool and making it a usable storage space. So with that, that would equate to $26 million in bonds that we do have programmed in right now, just so we would have the expenditure capacity to do so if that is a choice that council makes going forward in this next year. If that is something that's included in the budget, it does have to come back to council specifically to have authority to go try and solicit the bonds for those projects. So it would come back to you even if it's approved in this budget process. And then we do have contingency of $3.3 million. Mayor, Vice Mayor Hunt, this is where we would be able to draw from those funds if there were parts of those housing initiatives that are coming to council that need some funding or something like that. This is our bucket of available money in this next year for those unexpected type expenses where we don't know what they are until the year starts. And then we have programmed in the continued payment to the Yavapai County or for the event center, or excuse me, for the Wheelhouse building. And it's our third payment of 5. So we just have 2 more left after that one. And we also built in the potential for the debt issuance, the amount that we would have to pay for interest that first year. And then we have increased our transfer to the Capital Project Growth Fund to $4.5 million. And that is because our construction sales tax has been much higher than anticipated. And we're wanting to put those one-time revenues into a fund where they can be used for those one-time expenses and not relied on for ongoing operations. And the continued transfer of $3 million to HERF, and then debt service transfers. Police. With police, there's actually a decrease in personnel and operating, but again, it's because of animal control being reallocated to the Neighborhood Services Department. Additionally, because of how we programmed in that $5 million for all raises, the police step plan piece will be a portion of that, which is about $250,000. So we're not sure where those steps will fall because they're part of this review as well. So we didn't program those into their department. So they're part of that other umbrella amount. And then we also have dispatch services. We pay an amount to the dispatch center, the regional dispatch center in Prescott, for use of those operations. And that amount does continue to increase just based on calls and population. Training-wise, we do have a lot programmed in for police trainings. A lot of it is coming from the general fund, and there is some a small portion that is coming from the Smart and Safe Arizona Act, about 50,000 we've been able to program in there. And those are the funds that we get from Proposition 207 marijuana sales. And body-worn cameras, as Mr. Davidson highlighted, is ongoing. It's in its second year, so we're moving forward with that. It's been well received and a good program. And with that, the other important thing to note there is the alarm solution. So previously, we didn't do a full service outsource of our false alarms. It was partial. This is a full service of the false alarm fees and handling of that versus bringing it in-house where we would be paying more for staff to handle those billings and things like that.
So are we going to get a presentation on that so we know what kind of impacts it's going to be on businesses? Or I know that's been a question of businesses before, when they get charged. And
Mayor, Vice Mayor Hunt, we are going to be bringing that as part of the fee study that we're going to be presenting to you all at the beginning of June. And that'll be part of what our recommendations are on which fees should continue and which ones shouldn't, or if we need to increase. Preliminarily on that side, there's some things like the ongoing registration piece that doesn't make as much sense as, because not everyone is required to register, as just raising the amount for those needs, because the actual cost for officers to respond to false alarms is far higher than the amount that we're receiving back. But all of those findings will be presented to you at that June 1st meeting. So moving on to Public Works, this is an area where we are adding significant staff, and a lot of that is due to the janitorial that was previously outsourced. Additionally, the town engineer, which will help offset some of those engineering costs that we paid to outside agencies previously. And then adding fleet. As we're getting more and more vehicles in, we're going to need more and more assistance with fleet. And right now we have only 2 staff members doing everything for our entire fleet, and this will bring that much needed relief to them to add another body to help with this. And then we also are adding 2 streets workers as well, a worker 1 and a worker 2, and that'll help with the ongoing operations as they work on repairing everything that we have going on out there and the large scale projects that we have. So with street operations, we've increased the operating budget by 11%. That's primarily from increases in micro seal and just regular street operation maintenance. We've put some significant dollars towards that to help remedy some of those areas that are causing problems. And then in one-time operating, we have the transportation study is an important piece that we're going to be working on, as well as a street standards assessment to put some standards in place and work with consulting firms to make sure that we have the best possible roads that we can have in our area. And with capital, there's also significant investments. We have operating capital, which includes things like an asphalt laying machine, and we're going to be putting significant dollars towards Glassford Hill Road, 3rd lane. As Gilbert had mentioned, if we get state funding on that, that's about $7.5 million of that total. If we don't receive that, then that project will need to be pushed out further. And then we have Glassford Hill Road improvements. That's the mill and fill. That is starting hopefully soon. Next week, I believe you guys get an item for that. And I know the public's very excited about that road being fixed. And then additionally, we have the library building improvements to hopefully get the library leak-free, and the energy audit improvements with our HVAC and our plumbing fixture improvements and electrical improvements. And that, I think Mr. Davidson already covered a lot of these, so I will just leave it if anyone has any questions on that. Town clerk's office, a slight decrease in personnel just due to benefit elections, and then a decrease due to there not being an election. We do need to complete publicity pamphlets in for the 2024 election. So those will be done in June, so it'll hit next fiscal year. Additionally, Laserfish public portal, that's an investment, so the public can actually access our documents and things like that, so it can make public records requests easier process. Town manager's office, we did have an increase on town news. The rate went up a little bit. It didn't go up 30,000, that's just the total for it, to include that in our utility bills, so people know what is happening around town. And then some investment in the lobby and office furniture, as well as PVTV studio setup and event streaming equipment. With utilities, we're adding an administrative support 2 position and moving the 7 customer accounts representatives directly to utilities. And we have seen an increase in operating across the board, and a lot of that is just due to ongoing operational costs increasing with inflation and cost of goods. And we did add in permanently, in recent years, we added in those water tank and well rehabilitation dollars, so it's something that can be continually taken care of on a routine basis. And the manhole rehabilitation was also added in. That's separate than the raising. That's just to fix other problem areas in that for those manholes. And then we have the one-time operating. We have a lot of transmitters and meters that we have on there that were scheduled, and we've ran into supply chain issues continually. So we're hoping to continue approaching that program to get everything replaced with those transmitters, so everyone can access the Water Smart Portal the same way. And then we have capital. A lot of it we already covered as far as the headworks and the duplex booster station and lift station. There's a lot of smaller scale projects, and a lot is contingent on PFAS. There's a lot of remediation that has to be done in order for the recharge injection well and things like that to move forward, because we have to make sure that we're cleansing the water to a degree it's not complicating the PFAS problem. And then we have other water line and electrical upgrades that'll be done as well. So with that, that's the recap of all the departments. Things to consider before our next meeting. When we do tentative adoption, we're going to have additional amounts that we add in for projects that are not going to complete this year. Some of those, if we knew they weren't starting, were already in here, but there's some that may or may not have been completed, so we'll be adding those in, or equipment that is having supply chain issues where it won't be here in time. And then inflation continues to be a burden across the town. Things are increasing cost-wise, and we are seeing that on the positive side. Our sales tax has had record increases as well, which allows us to keep our cash flow strong so we can address those needs. And then our class and comp study results and our water and sewer rate study results will all impact the budget as well. So the next steps on our budget journey are the tentative budget adoption on May 25th, and then we publish our notices, and then the final adoption isn't until June 22nd. And at that point is when we're hoping to bring back the potential approval of the class and comp study results and how we're going to implement those. And with that, does anyone have questions or comments?
Good job, Katie.
Thanks.
Katie, I just want to say that it's a great budget. I love the way that you put in, as I just went to it every time, it said, summary of significant budget changes. That was great. And I also like the pie charts where you did pictures in them. That was really great. And Gilbert, where you said in your letter was really good, where you said, which we all agree with up here, the boundless vista and wide open spaces. That's what we all value and we all want to protect. So thank you for adding that for our residents as a reminder, and that Prescott Valley is one of Arizona's top communities. And with you at the helm, I know that's going to happen. So thank you for that. And again, that we're the 8th safest community in Arizona by Safeways. Thank you, Chief, and thank the men and women at Prescott Valley Police Department. And just so many awesome things that have happened, that we transitioned to the state retirement system, making us more marketable to talent that will come in. And, you know, modernizing codes and what have you. And then on the second page of your letter, I put toot toot, which means we were tooting our horn, where it says invest in critical and necessary infrastructure projects, because that's so important to our town, because we had so much deferred maintenance. And I think our residents really, really, really appreciate that. So I'm glad that we're spending reserves, because our reserves are still high enough, and we need to do that to make our community more marketable and more quality for our residents. So thank you very much, and thank you for being at the helm of our community.
Council, have you anything else?
I have a couple of comments. I also would like to compliment you, both of you, on showing our strategic plan outline in every opportunity here, that what is quality of life, what is water stewardship, what is high-performing team, what is prosperous community, what you identify these various parts of our budget that really stand out to make it easier to understand where our money is going and why it's going that direction. And I wanted to compliment you also, along with what Lori was saying, having $55 million, 2 times more than what is required by council policy and sound budgeting practices. That's phenomenal to me. 2.7 times. That's just incredible. And I thank you so much for your conscientious efforts and keeping tabs on everything that we spend, and making sure that we have a very conservative budget that we can be proud of and brag about. Thank you.
Anything else for staff? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Davidson, you have anything? All right. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Have a great day.